you're looking at here is well, I don't really know what the hell this thing is, and neither does the uploader. Redditor J Turley85 uploaded the footage writing, "My wife's coworker went out hunting this past weekend. They apparently took a pack of dogs out with them. While in the mountains, 2 of the dogs ran off. They chased them and found them both ripped apart after some searching. While trying to look for whatever caused it, they found this and recorded it through their scope. I tried to upscale the video for clarity, but this was the best I could get. Anyone know what this could be? The arms look like they have hair coming off it, and they look extremely long and skinny. At first I thought it could be another hunter, but I can't be sure. And yeah, I don't know, it could maybe be a hunter with a sheet over their head for like camouflage or something, but along with the story about all the dogs having been ripped apart, definitely makes whatever this thing is a lot stranger, and I don't like how it moves. What you're looking at here is said to be footage of a creature known as the Lake Van monster, something that's been spotted in this lake in eastern Turkey. The first sighting goes way back to 1889, but it really grabbed headlines between 1995 and 1997 when more and more people started reporting on it. Over 1,000 people claim they've seen it. In 1997, a university assistant named Unal Kozak even filmed what he claimed was the creature, and the footage still stirs up arguments to this day. Some folks swear they see a beak in the footage, others think he just grabbed a clip of a swimming elephant. So if anyone can find a longer clip of a swimming elephant that matches up with this video, something that would have been available in 1997, please share in the comments. Maybe we can solve this together. Until then though, this one is gonna remain a mystery. Alright, this next video is really interesting because people can't really seem to decide if they think it's a creature or some type of unidentified flying object. The clip was posted to YouTube by Montana Mullet Militia, who wrote in the description, "Was out coyote hunting last night and caught this on film. It was super bizarre, 37 degrees outside, white hot mode." So this was captured on a thermal camera. Those little white specks are believed to be coyotes, with their bright colors showing that they're warm compared to their environment. The darker figure or object, first appearing to kind of run, then later seeing to fly, shows up colder than everything else around it, which is why it looks dark in the footage. As for what the hell this thing is, well, your guess is as good as mine. This photo was taken back in 1934 by a Swiss photographer named Balkan. He claimed he saw something strange near a log, some kind of creature that didn't look like anything he'd seen before, so he took a photo of it, and the picture kicked up quite a bit of interest. It even inspired a German magazine to sponsor a full-blown expedition to track down the creature. But like a lot of cryptid hunts, the trip was a bust, and people kinda moved on. But there have still been some strange sightings since. What exactly is this thing? Well, it's known as the Tatzelworm, a legendary beast from alpine folklore. It's said to have been haunting the mountains of Europe for centuries. Descriptions vary, but most say it looks like a chunky, cat-faced reptile, but with no back legs. Sometimes doesn't even have any at all, a bit more snake-like. Sightings have been reported all over the Alps, from Switzerland and Austria to parts of Germany and northern Italy. And it goes by a bunch of different names depending on where you are. Names which I'm gonna pronounce perfectly: Stollenworm, Springworm, and Pratzelworm, just to name a few. Even in modern times, people still claim to see it. So was the Tatzelworm just a tall tale, or did this photographer really capture something strange slithering through the Alps? Alright, this next one, nope, absolutely not. Someone's home security camera picked up what can only be described as pure nightmare fuel. There's this pale, creepy looking creature crouched in the bushes outside their house, just staring off into the distance, looking around. Glowing eyes, long limbs, totally bald. And when it stands up, it's tall, uncomfortably tall. People in the comments have been saying it looks like a Slender Man or a rake. There's also something else going on here. Some viewers pointed out it almost looks like it's wearing a black cloak or something. A cloaked, glowing-eyed rake demon thing. Again, that's a yikes for me. The face is the worst part. It's just blank. There's no mouth, no nose, nothing but those eerie glowing eyes. If I saw this outside my house, I would be gone. Keep the house. Take the furniture, I don't care. What do you think this thing was though? An alien, a demon, a hoax? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. This video was taken by a fishing guide in Saskatchewan who spotted this massive wolf near his lodge. And I mean prehistorically massive, as if you need me to tell you that. Just look at it. The man spotted it from his window and decided to grab his camera. He stepped outside to get a better shot and the wolf backed off. But then it came back, and that's when his dog Trigger decided to chase after the thing. Waited for Trigger to turn her back, and in a blink grabbed her by the hindquarters and tossed her in the air like a rag doll. That happens off camera because the guy rightly stopped filming and, went to save his dog. Luckily, the guy's buddy came out running with a shotgun, firing it into the air to break up the fight, and the wolf ran off. But not for long. It was bold enough to come back a couple more times. Luckily, there's no more trouble and the dog was okay aside from a few cuts. But things would have gone way worse if they hadn't scared the thing off in time. So this next clip comes from a Reddit user with the unforgettable name Panty Dinner 2003. The clip was captured in Louisiana. It starts off pretty normal. A couple guys are filming a field, catching some deer in the shot, along with a few dark shapes that look like dogs. So far, all good, but there's something that steps out of the trees, and it is not normal. This thing comes charging out of the woods, and it kind of looks like it's galloping, but it's definitely not a horse, and it sure isn't human either. It's got these long, creepy arms and seems to be running on all fours, but not in the way your typical four-legged animals do. This thing is off. Now, at first, I wasn't totally buying the laughter behind the camera, gotta be honest. I thought, all right, maybe this is staged, but I don't know. It could also be that nervous laughter, the kind people do when they're freaked out and just don't know how to process what they're seeing. What do you think? Weird animal? Skinwalker? Let me know which theory you're going with down in the comments. This next video comes out of Mexico. Two men came out to their back porch to find an owl acting very strangely. So strangely, in fact, that they started to wonder if it was a shape-shifting witch or a bruja. A bruja is usually seen as a woman who uses magic, sometimes for good, sometimes for darker stuff. Some are said to cast curses and shapeshift. They show up a lot in ghost stories and creepy legends, especially in rural areas in Mexico. In some tales, a bruja might appear as an old woman, a mysterious animal, or a shadowy figure flying through the night. Now, the guys filming were kind of jokingly talking to this owl, asking if it was a bruja, but man, if the sun was down and you were alone and you saw this, I don't think you'd be asking that question in jest. I just do not like how this owl is moving, the way it starts stretching out its neck like that. Just no. Is it a scared or injured owl, or could there be something else going on here? This video was uploaded to TikTok by Jay Hayson, who simply wrote that these girls broke into his backyard and were watching him. Seems to me they were doing a lot more than just watching. One tells him to come out here, let's have fun. The other just cranes her net back, makes all these very unsettling faces, mostly just by opening her mouth all wide. And yeah, it seems like a great idea to go out there. Now, if this video is genuine, for one, it's very creepy. Those ladies were clearly not of sound mind at the time. And two, this was a very, very bad idea on the girls' part. Don't break into people's backyards and stare at them. At best, you've scared a stranger in their own home. Worst case scenario, you get shot at and you die, especially if you're in America. Doesn't matter if this one's a guy in a costume or some kind of prank. This is the kind of thing that would make me pack up my whole life and move to a different country. The video was posted to TikTok by Fast Bites Horror, and according to the description, a traveler had stumbled across this freaky creature hiding in the shadows, perched up on a ledge, just glaring down at him. And the poor guy is so scared, he starts praying out loud. You can hear the fear in his voice. And while I may not be religious myself, if I saw this thing, I definitely would be. I'd be like, well, I guess Satan really does exist. All that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video. What you're looking at here may not look like much at first glance. It's a snake. I mean, big deal, right? Well, the thing is, this is an aerial photograph taken way up in a helicopter. That snake is said to have been 50 feet long. Back in 1959, Colonel Remy van Leerde, an experienced Belgian World War II fighter pilot, was flying a helicopter over the Congo. As he's flying over the jungle in the Katanga region, he spots something moving down below. He claimed it was a massive massive snake, and it would have had to be for it to catch his eye way up in a chopper.
Then I was already flying for 25 years, so I have a very good experience of measuring things. And I would say the snake I saw there was close to 50 foot.
The snake had green and brown scales and a head that was apparently 3 feet long and 2 feet wide. You could fit a grown man in its mouth. And as he flew in closer, the snake rose up off the ground about 10 feet into the air like it was trying to strike at the chopper. Van Lierde circled around a few times so someone else on board could snap a photo of it. Of course, skeptics have their doubts, but he stuck to his story up until his death in 1990. But what do you think he saw out there in the jungle? A new species, a leftover from the dinosaur age, or was the whole story a hoax? Let me know what you think in the comments. This next story takes us deep into the heart of Texas, a little rural spot called Davina out in Fayette County. Michael Demmel captured something really strange on a hunting camera on his property. He has a bunch of these cameras set up, using them to track wildlife like coyotes, bobcats, and raccoons. These motion sensor cameras take about 100 pictures a day, and Michael goes through them every single day. He's been doing this for 10 years, so when he says something looks off, that's really saying something. Well, one night he captured whatever this thing was. He said he thought it was a monkey at first, and to be fair, in the blurry photo it kinda does look like one. Of course, that would still be very, very strange. There are no monkeys just running around in Texas unless one escaped from a zoo, and no, there were no monkey jailbreaks reported. So he shows the image to some friends, tries to get some answers, and the photo eventually hits the local news. Some say the thing looks a lot like a chupacabra, the legendary cryptid that's been blamed for livestock deaths for decades. Others think it has a bit of an alien or skinwalker kind of vibe. Now, the creature's about as big as a medium-sized dog, but the body shape, the face, totally off. Michael said, "In the 10 years I've been reviewing my cameras, I have never encountered anything like it." Even the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department got involved. They looked at the photo but ruled out any normal animal, saying it didn't look like a baby deer or anything they could easily identify. I always liked to imagine Spider-Man was real when I was a kid. Kinda always hoped I'd see him swinging around up there one day. Well, I would have been thrilled to see this next video. This footage was captured at the pedestrian bridge in Kiev, not where you'd be expecting to spot the web slinger, but superheroes do get around. Now clearly this is a person crawling under the bridge, but even so, why? I mean, this is pretty dangerous. That water down below does not look very deep. Unless this person has actual web slinging abilities, if they fall, they're getting hurt or worse. So who is this person? Is it just a thrill seeker? Are they out of their mind? Or is there a chance that this isn't even a person at all and that the camera person caught something otherworldly crawling under that bridge? This piece of footage was uploaded to Reddit by user KeyProposal8529. Some sort of strange creature was peering out at them from the woods. They wrote, "Hello all, I live near the Trail of Tears in Missouri. As I got home one night I saw this thing in the woods by my house. From where it was standing it has to be tall because there's a ditch right below where it stands. Any ideas? I'm terrified. Yes, I stayed in my car until I got the balls to run inside my house." Now, I have no idea what this thing could be. It's hard to make out, but if the Redditor is telling the truth here, then this is a pretty creepy piece of footage because they pass by this area constantly. I mean, it's right outside their home. They know when something is out of place. A Reddit user out in the Midwest has been spotting a strange creature in their neighborhood. First, they posted these images along with a caption reading, "These are photos taken in the Midwest from an iPhone at night. The cryptid in question randomly appears in the same spot. Once a person begins to approach, it will vanish. It was seen again a few weeks ago and moved at an incredible speed across a few backyards. A local dog will bark at the spot that it appears in, even when it's not there. Trail cams will be set up soon. Please give me some ideas as to what it could be." The Redditor also posted an update with a video attached. This time, we can supposedly hear whatever this strange creature is. They wrote in the description, "We've got a video of the cryptid making what sounds like a scream. My friend was trying to find where it was standing but couldn't see it. Once the video ended, it appeared again in his yard but vanished as he went to get his phone again." This video was uploaded to YouTube by Paranormal Planet, who'd been exploring an ice cave in Hallstatt, Austria. Most of the video is pretty standard touristy type footage of the cave until we get to the end and see whatever this is. That is a pretty freaky looking creature. Now, my first thought was like, I don't know, maybe it's a frog or something, but according to the uploader, this thing was the size of a large man, and they were also standing far enough away that they wouldn't have picked it up in this kind of detail if it was something as small as a frog. So if that's to be believed, then this is a pretty strange piece of footage, and honestly, the more I do look at it, the less frog-like this thing really looks. I mean, frogs don't really articulate like this, and they don't usually chill in ice caves either. And the way it bends its limbs almost looks like how a human would climb, except it's way too long and spindly to be a person. So I don't know what this is. Let me know your thoughts down below. This next video was posted to Facebook by a man named Clay Shiner. He was filming the woods one evening because he spotted something moving just behind the tree line. Turns out, was not a bear. The thing that really struck me about this video is how long this thing's arms are. At first it just looks like, you know, a typical formless black shape hiding in the trees like so many Sasquatch videos you see. But when it steps forward a bit and stretches its arms out to the sides, it's like, damn, those are long, very ape-like, very creepy. Reddit user Adjacent Gunman posted this image with the caption, "Over a year ago, this picture was taken by a trail cam back on my property. This version has been lightened. It's something holding a dead coyote by the throat, and it stands about 7.5 to 8 feet tall." He also posted an unedited version of the image. He said he based the thing's height off of where its eyes are compared to his cabin. Now, this thing is hard to make out, but there's definitely something there. Could it be a bear standing on its hind legs? Possibly, but the way it's holding its prey, it looks almost humanoid. But I don't know, maybe that's just my wishful thinking. I wholeheartedly want Bigfoot to be real. Uploaded to the YouTube channel Hola Bible in 2011, this video really creeped a lot of people out. The uploader said he'd been hearing some strange sounds coming from the forest behind his home in Oregon. Keep in mind, he lived 6 miles from the nearest city. He went out to investigate with a night vision camera. Well, he didn't get very far before he came across the source of these strange noises. Crouching in some brush was some sort of odd-looking, hairless creature. He zooms into the thing a bit, trying to make out what the hell it is, and then this happens. So it looks like Gollum was lurking around in this guy's woods, or an alien, or a rake. It looks like a lot of things, all of them creepy, none of which you'd want skulking around in your backyard. I just hope this dude moved. And finally, I have another piece of Bigfoot footage for you. This video comes out of Russia, and in it, we see some folks filming some woods near their property. They'd spotted something sprinting through the trees, and what they see is pretty shocking. What's really cool about this video is how the thing moves. How many supposed Bigfoot videos do you see where it's just this figure like lumbering through the trees like a dude in a costume, unsure of their footing? You kind of see them trying to keep their balance. Well, that is not the case here. This thing is sprinting at high speed and leaping across the ground as if it's an animal that is very familiar with its environment. That's why in November of 2024, chaos broke out at the Alpha Genesis Research Facility in Yamasee, South Carolina, when 43 rhesus macaque monkeys escaped after a caretaker reportedly left a door unlocked. The monkeys ran off into nearby wooded areas. 35 were rounded up pretty quickly, but 8 of them were on the loose for weeks. These macaques are very intelligent animals, and this was concerning because they can carry diseases transmissible to humans. So folks were pretty concerned as days turned into weeks. But what exactly were these monkeys being used for? Well, the facility does research involving viruses, bioweapons. So yeah, this was starting to sound like the beginning of Planet of the Apes. Meanwhile, animal rights groups were all over this, calling out the lab for being sloppy and putting the public at risk. And of course, they were already pissed about monkeys being tested on in the first place. In the end, all the monkeys were safely recaptured, but this was definitely not a good look. In early 2025, Colossal Biosciences made headlines after announcing that they had had successfully brought back the direwolf, or something like it. Using advanced gene editing, they took gray wolf DNA and basically tweaked it until it resembled the long extinct direwolf. Bigger build, stronger jaws, different fur. Not exactly a clone, but close enough that it was a pretty big deal. The company called it de-extinction. Some scientists called it more of a Frankenstein DNA project, but either way, the animals are real. They're alive, and they're not planning to keep them in a lab forever. Colossal said the goal is to reintroduce these wolves into the wild at some point to restore balance to certain ecosystems, but that raised a ton of red flags. First off, no one really knows how they're going to behave in the real world. What happens if it mates with modern wolves, throws off the predator-prey balance? There's also the question of what happens if these things turn aggressive. Colossal insists that they got it under control, but when you're resurrecting an ancient predator in a lab, some people feel pretty iffy about it. Not me though, I think this is awesome. Between 1966 and 1967, people in Point Pleasant, West Virginia kept reporting something strange, a tall creature with glowing red eyes. It was humanoid, but it also had giant wings. They called it the Mothman. Some said it chased their cars, others claimed it flew over buildings or hovered near the old TNT plant outside of town. Dozens of reports came in over the course of about a year. Then in December 1967, the Silver Bridge suddenly collapsed during rush hour, killing 46 people. And this is when the Mothman legend really exploded, because some claimed that they'd seen the creature perched on the bridge just before the disaster. One of the biggest rumors surrounding the mysterious Mothman creature is that it was the result of a messed up government experiment. But whether it was a misidentified bird or something else entirely, nobody ever got a solid explanation. In April of 1973, a man named Henry McDaniel from Enfield, Illinois, called the police in a panic, saying that some bizarre creature had tried to break into his house. He said it had 3 legs, short arms, and glowing red eyes. He fired at it, but said it just jumped away unfazed. A few days later, some local kids said that they saw something similar near an abandoned house, and pretty soon word spread and people from outside the town started showing up, hoping to spot it. Some thought it might have been an escaped kangaroo, others leaned into the weirder theories, like it being a government experiment that got loose, or something not of this world at all. Interestingly, the area was near a military base, so that definitely helped with the government experiment angle. Government tried to downplay the whole thing, of course, but people who saw it stuck to their stories. Even the cops admitted that McDaniel didn't seem like someone making things up. To this day, nobody really knows what happened that spring. In the summer of 1988, a teenager in Lee County, South Carolina, claimed that this huge creature attacked his car near Scape Ore Swamp. He said it was about 7 feet tall, covered in green, scaly skin, and had glowing red eyes. His car was damaged, there were these deep scratches all over it, and his side mirror was busted. Not to mention that the kid was clearly shaken up. Police wondered if he was just making up the story to cover up an accident, but this was a pretty lame excuse to come up with. I mean, a lizard monster attacking your car? They didn't pay it much attention, but after that, more people started coming forward with similar stories. One woman said something ripped the chrome off her car. Another man claimed he saw the thing staring at him from the edge of the swamp. Locals started calling this creature the Lizard Man. Police started looking into it now as more reports just kept rolling in. One of the sillier explanations at the time was that people were actually seeing a bear, which is a pretty lazy explanation. Again, there's an escaped lab experiment theory for this one as well. As fast as it started though, the sightings stopped. It's since become a local legend. As for what people were really seeing though, who knows? I can safely say it probably wasn't a bear though. In 2021, a biotech company called Oxitec released genetically modified mosquitoes in the Florida Keys. The goal was to reduce the population of Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, which spread diseases like dengue and Zika. These lab-engineered male mosquitoes were designed to mate with wild females, passing on a gene that would prevent their offspring from surviving to adulthood. The idea was that over time the mosquito population would decline, but the plan didn't go exactly as planned. Some scientists were worried that the gene might not be as lethal as expected and that some offspring would survive and potentially create a hybrid population. And how would the reduction of one mosquito species affect predators or allow potentially more dangerous mosquito species to overpopulate. Even with these concerns though, the project moved forward and millions of genetically modified mosquitoes were released. It's only been a few years, so the long-term effects remain to be seen. In August of 1955, a woman named Naomi Johnson went swimming in the Ohio River near Evansville, Indiana, and came out with a story that's still being talked about today. She said something grabbed her from below, yanked her underwater, and tried to drag her down. She fought her way free and made it back to the surface, but her leg was covered in scratches and stained with this green slimy residue that wouldn't wash off for days. That alone would have made it a weird local mystery, but then it's just got stranger. Naomi later claimed a man in a military uniform came to her house, said he was with the US Air Force, and told her not to talk about what happened. No official report was filed and nobody could explain what she'd seen. Some people connect this to UFO sightings in the area around that time, saying it could have been part of a larger cover-up event. Others think that this was just a case of someone getting tangled up with a big fish or a log or seaweed. Still though, doesn't really explain the military visit part. Very weird story. From the late 1990s up until 2013, people in the Swiss village of Mal kept reporting a strange figure walking through the woods. They called it Le Loyon, or the Ghost of Mal. Witnesses described it as a tall person in a military-style cloak wearing a creepy old-school gas mask. They'd be completely silent, never speaking, just walking the same path over and over. No one knew who or what this was. Then in 2013, someone finally snapped a photo. A few weeks later, the sightings stopped. All that was found was a pile of the costume left in the woods, along with a note that basically said the person behind it was sick of being harassed and misunderstood. Some say it was just a harmless eccentric who didn't want to be bothered. Others think it was performance art or some type of social experiment, but there's another theory that something was going on in those woods. I mean, why walk around in a gas mask unless there's a very good reason? Was there some sort of experiment going on? It's really strange, because if it was just a hoax, I mean, just, some weirdo dressing up to scare people, you'd think they would have called it quits way sooner, but this lasted over a decade. There are some real accidents connected to the Popelik monster, but just what in the hell is the Popelik monster? It's a creature said to haunt a train trestle bridge in Louisville, Kentucky. People who've claimed to see it describe some kind of goat-man hybrid, has hooves, fur, horns, and the face of a man. The story goes that it lures people onto the tracks using hypnosis or by mimicking people, and then they get hit by an oncoming train. It sounds pretty out there, but people have actually died on that bridge. The train line is active, and because of the legend, people started going there to try and spot the beast for themselves. In 2016, a young woman was killed while investigating the site with her boyfriend. Another person died years earlier under similar circumstances, and some say the creature is just a spooky story to scare kids away from a dangerous area, but the origin of the legend is still murky. It goes back decades with no clear first report. So was it made up entirely? Or did someone really see something weird out there in the woods once and the story just grew from there? Whatever the truth is, the combination of actual deaths and the eerie setting has helped keep the Popelik monster legend alive. We've veered pretty far into the cryptozoology, urban legend realm, so let's talk about something a little more science-based and down to earth: synthetic biology in general. This is basically when scientists build or redesign living things from the ground up. Might tweak bacteria to make medicine or design microbes that eat plastic. It sounds helpful, and sometimes it is, but the problem is once you mess with life at that level, you can't always predict what's going to happen. There have been real concerns that some of these lab-made organisms could escape into the environment and do things they weren't intended to do, like spreading out of control, mutating, and wiping out other species. One example people talk about is modified yeast strains used to make biofuels. So tweaking the yeast genes so that it produces stuff like ethanol or other chemicals that can be used for fuel. Pretty cool. Even scientists working in this field admit that we're still figuring out the risks. Most of the time, things go as planned, but if just one of these creations gets out and starts doing something unexpected, things can spiral fast. Deep in the frozen wilds of Siberia, a creature straight out of prehistoric times was found curled up in the permafrost, a baby saber-toothed cat. It was discovered in 2020 near the Indigirka River, and despite being over 35,000 years old, the thing looked like it had only been dead a few days. It had thick fur, skin, claws, even its internal organs. It was all still there, and yes, the tiny sabers too. Scientists think it might have been buried in a landslide and flash frozen before decay could even start, and wasn't alone. Another cub, a few years younger, was found in the same region, preserved the same eerie way. But nobody's rushing to thaw these little killers out. The deeper they look, the more they realize just how little they know about these ancient predators. There's something about seeing a baby version of something so dangerous, though, that just hits different. Like, it's cute, but also very much not. In 2016, a gold miner working near Dawson City in Canada's Yukon Territory came across something in the permafrost, a perfectly preserved Ice Age wolf pup, frozen for over 57,000 years. It wasn't a skeleton or a pile of fur and bones, it was an entire wolf, with skin, fur, tiny claws, even some of its whiskers were still intact. Genetic testing showed that it came from an ancient extinct branch, older than modern gray wolves, and adapted to a world most humans wouldn't survive 5 minutes in. They think it died inside its den. Maybe the roof collapsed, maybe the ground shifted, but either way, something sealed it in tight and froze it solid before decay had even had a chance to start. And that kind of preservation doesn't happen unless the timing is perfect, and honestly, it's a little creepy how perfect it was. The more scientists studied it, the more questions they had about its species, about how it got so well preserved, about what else might be hiding under the ice just as intact. In the Siberian permafrost, scientists found 2 cave-lion cubs so well preserved they didn't really look ancient, they looked recent. But these weren't house cats. They were baby versions of Panthera spile, aka the Eurasian cave lion. These things were massive, possibly larger than modern lions, and built for brute power. They hunted mammoths, they hunted bison, they hunted each other. One study found bones of a cave lion that had been gnawed on by another cave lion. The 2 frozen cubs, dubbed Sparta and Boris, are estimated to be around 30,000 years old, and scientists still don't know how they died exactly, but they're so well preserved, they're actually talking of cloning. The thing is, nobody's sure what kind of animal behavior you'd get out of these things if you actually defrosted them. Their instincts are 30,000 years old and hardwired for a world we don't live in anymore. So what could possibly go wrong there? In 2015, researchers in Siberia discovered a frozen woolly rhino calf that had been locked in ice for over 34,000 years. Its name is Sasha, and it's the only baby woolly rhino ever found. And it's not just bones, this thing still had skin, hair, a stubby little horn, even muscle tissue. But don't let the baby part fool you, woolly rhinos were absolute tanks. Adults could weigh over 2 tons, with horns up to 3 feet long, and you'd think for their size that they'd be slow too, but fossil evidence shows they could charge like a freight train, and they likely had tempers to match. These animals were built for war against the cold, against predators, and sometimes even against each other. Ancient cave art shows humans were just terrified of these things, often drawing them mid-charge or goring other animals, or again locked in battle with each other. If anyone's thinking of cloning a few of these things, they better make sure the fencing is just really strong. You can't see them with the naked eye, but Deloid rotifers are kind of freaky. These tiny aquatic creatures were found frozen in the Siberian permafrost, buried 11 feet deep and at least 24,000 years old. Scientists thawed them out and they started moving. So after 2.5 ice ages, they just woke up. They also cloned themselves. Deloid rotifers reproduce through parthenogenesis, which means they've got no need for males. They can just endlessly self-copy, and they don't just survive cold. They can endure radiation, starvation, dehydration, even the vacuum of space. Their bodies will just shut down but stay preserved, and then when conditions are right, they kind of reboot. Now, scientists are wondering how long they can actually last and how many more are still down there dormant waiting. In the icy ground of Siberia, scientists have dug up baby mammoths so perfectly preserved they still have eyelashes. One of the most famous is Lyuba, found in 2007 by a reindeer herder. She's around 42,000 years old, but she still has skin, fur, internal organs. Even the milk from her mother is still inside her stomach. Another calf, Yuka, was found with strange cut marks on her bones, like something or someone had been trying to carve her up. Could have been ancient human butchering, attacks from other predators, but the truth is nobody knows exactly what happened. Every time one of these calves gets pulled from the permafrost, though, it cranks up the conversation about cloning, but even if they could bring one of these things back, should they? Once again in Siberia and Alaska, scientists have found ancient bison that are so well preserved they still had red in their veins. One of the best examples was discovered in 1979, a frozen bison they named Blue Babe because of this bluish tint from the minerals in the soil. The thing had muscle, skin, even visible wounds. It had clearly been killed by something, and then it froze before it could rot. But here's something pretty cool. These mummified bison showed signs of being stalked and eaten by predators that do not exist anymore. Deep claw marks, crushed vertebrae, and punctures that match the bite force of predators that have been extinct for a very, very long time. And scientists haven't just found one, there are multiple ancient bison mummies turning up as the permafrost melts, and each one paints a clear picture of this brutal predatory world buried under the ice. They're also keeping samples for cloning research potentially, so if you ever wanted to see a prehistoric beast brought back from the dead, they are kind of working on it. In Yukon, Canada, buried in the permafrost, scientists uncovered the frozen remains of Ice Age horses that once galloped across the tundra in massive herds. Obviously, they weren't like today's horses. They were stockier, hairier, adapted to survive in some of the harshest conditions Earth has ever seen. One foal, perfectly preserved, was found in a gold mine in 2018, still covered in reddish-brown fur. Hooves, eyelashes, even its stomach contents intact. It was over 40,000 years old, but looked more like it had just lain down for a nap. The species, Aquis lambe, went extinct thousands of years ago, but DNA from these frozen animals are so well preserved sometimes, scientists are seriously considering using it for cloning. The idea is to bring them back, and not just as a curiosity, but possibly to repopulate the tundra with them to help slow permafrost melt. Because right now it's melting faster than ever, and we're seeing more and more pieces of an ecosystem that hasn't seen sunlight in tens of thousands of years, and not everything coming out of the ice is dead. In 2014, scientists digging through 30,000-year-old permafrost in Siberia found something that was very much not extinct, a virus, a massive one. So big you could see it under a regular microscope. They called it Pithovirus sibericum, and it's part of a terrifying new category, giant viruses. Two words you just don't want to hear right beside each other. Well, this ancient giant virus actually reanimated after being frozen for tens of thousands of years, and more of these ancient viruses have been found since, buried in melting ice, all still capable of waking up and infecting hosts. The one they revived didn't target humans, just amoebas, thankfully. But that's the part that makes researchers nervous. If some ancient virus can survive that long, what else is waiting to thaw? And are we even remotely prepared for it? Because you can quarantine, a lion, you can contain a mammoth, but a virus you've never dealt with before? Good luck. In Canada's Yukon Territory, scientists came across bones and fragments of an animal that sounds made up. Giant Ice Age camels. Yes, camels in the snow. Kind of a bizarre image. Not the two-humped animals we know today, obviously. They were massive and built to survive brutal cold, not scorching heat. They had long legs, thick fat stores, and bones tougher than steel. Fossils of these ancient camels were found in gold mines near Dawson City, preserved in permafrost so well, researchers were able to extract collagen from their bones, something that usually doesn't survive past a few thousand years. These camels would have roamed the same icy landscape as mammoths, direwolves, and saber-toothed cats. Some estimates say they stood over 9 feet tall, and while they might not look terrifying at first glance, just their sheer size, the power, the fact that they existed existed in this totally different version of North America, it makes them feel more like monsters than mammals. Scientists still don't completely understand how they adapted to such extreme environments or how they disappeared, but every time the ground thaws a little more bones come up, and we're starting to realize just how alien the Ice Age really was. You've probably heard of sea monkeys before. They sell these to kids like, I don't know, pets, I guess. Just add water and you'll have this family of small little creatures who apparently wear swimsuits and go to the beach. They do make them look a lot more fun on the package. But what you might not know is that sea monkeys or brine shrimp are some of the toughest little creatures on the planet. Their eggs can go into a dormant state, and in that state, they can survive all kinds of punishment: extreme heat, freezing cold, radiation. NASA figured this out way back in the 70s and started using them in space experiments. In fact, brine shrimp eggs have flown on multiple space missions, including Apollo and later shuttle missions. Some were even taken into low Earth orbit, exposed to the vacuum of space, and then brought back down to see if they could still hatch. Spoiler: they did. It's kind of wild. These things are sold in toy stores, and yet they're more durable than most military technology. Unless you were to just squish them with your fingers, but you know what I mean. Scientists love studying them because they help us understand how biological life might survive long-term space travel, or even drift between planets inside meteors. Tardigrades, also called water bears, are tiny creatures less than 1 millimeter long, but they're better at surviving than you and me and everyone else on the planet. Again, when it comes to harsh environments. In 2007, scientists stuck some of these things to the outside of a spacecraft during the European Space Agency's Photon M3 mission. That meant full exposure to the vacuum of space, cosmic radiation, and wild temperature swings, and guess what? A bunch of them survived. Not only that, they reproduced after coming back to Earth. So how do they pull that off? Well, tardigrades have what's called cryptobiosis. When conditions are harsh enough, they curl up into a dried out ball called a ton, basically shutting down almost every function in their body. They basically put themselves into suspended animation, and in this state they don't need food, water, or even oxygen. Their DNA gets wrapped in protective proteins, shielding it from radiation damage. They've been frozen, boiled, blasted with X-rays, and starved for decades, and they bounce back. Some scientists think if there's ever life on another planet, it might be something like a tardigrade. That's why these things have been called the toughest animals on Earth. Deinococcus radiodurans sounds like a dinosaur, but it's actually the polar opposite. It's a microscopic bacteria, sometimes referred to as Conan the Bacterium. Yes, the names are deceiving. One sounds like a dinosaur. It's nicknamed after one of the buffest characters in fiction, but I swear these things are not massive. It gets its nickname because it can survive doses of radiation that would just liquefy a human. We're talking thousands of times the lethal dose. Scientists have blasted it with radiation, dried it out, frozen it, even dipped it in acid, and it survived every time. The secret lies in its DNA repair system. When radiation tears its genetic code to pieces, Conan just calmly puts itself back together. Its cells have multiple copies of DNA, so if one gets damaged, it uses the others as a blueprint to fix it. Basically, it has Wolverine's healing factor, which I think would be a more apt nickname: Wolverine Bacterium. Last time I checked, Conan the Barbarian can't grow back limbs, but I digress. Obviously, space is no problem for these things. In 2015, researchers sent it into low Earth orbit, unprotected, for over a year. When they brought it back down, it was still viable. Some experts believe bacteria like this could attach to asteroids or space dust and then travel between planets, a theory called panspermia. If anything ever manages to colonize Mars, it might not be us first. It might be Conan the Bacterium. Alright, now for something with actual limbs that we can see with the naked eye. The midge. They may look like normal bugs, but some species of these little guys are absolutely amazing. In 2007, scientists sent some midges into space on the same mission they carried the tardigrades on, Photon M3. They exposed them to the vacuum of space and cosmic radiation for over a week, and you guessed it, they survived. So, how? Well, it's the way they handle extreme environments on Earth that probably prepares them for space. Midges are known to live in some of the harshest conditions on the planet, whether it's freezing temperatures in the Arctic or dry conditions in the desert. These things have adapted to survive at all, and that's why their eggs and larvae are able to hibernate in a dried out, almost dormant state. When conditions are better, they basically come back to life. Lichens are one of those life forms you actually see all the time, but probably never think about. They're those weird crusty patches on rocks and tree bark, but they're not just plants and they're not just fungi. Lichens are actually a partnership between a fungus and either an algae or a cyanobacterium, and together they're pretty tough. In 2008, scientists launched a bunch of lichen samples into space on a mission called Biopan 6. They exposed them directly to outer space, and when they brought the lichens back to Earth, they were still photosynthesizing. Like, as soon as they hit sunlight, they just picked up where they left off. The reason they survived is because lichens are built for hardship. They're used to living in places like Arctic tundras, hot deserts, mountain cliffs, so their cells already know how to hunker down and conserve energy. When you've been training on some of the harshest conditions imaginable on Earth, space is just another challenge. Scientists love these things for that exact reason. They're like a living model for what might survive on Mars or the Moon. Bacillus and Clostridium species can form spores, tiny rock-hard capsules. These spores are dormant, super tough, and able to survive insane conditions like heat, radiation, and total vacuum. Back in 2008, researchers launched spores of Bacillus and Clostridium into low Earth orbit on NASA's EXPOSE mission. They were stuck on the outside of the International Space Station, getting blasted with UV light and space radiation. Some of them were even left out for 18 months, and yep, some of those little spores still germinated after they got back. They go into total shutdown mode and then wrap themselves in this thick shell made of protein and this. So this blocks radiation and helps them retain water. This ability is what makes scientists think spores could maybe survive the trip from Mars to Earth on a meteorite. Again, that panspermia idea. Cryomyces is a black fungus that lives in one of the harshest places on Earth, the dry, freezing valleys of Antarctica. These valleys are so desolate, NASA actually uses them as a stand-in for Mars. So yeah, if you can survive there, you're already halfway to being a Martian. In a 2016 experiment, scientists took these things and sent them into actual space, though, stuck them right onto the outside of the International Space Station for 18 months, and the fungus lived. It even kept its DNA mostly intact and could still grow once it got home. Cryomyces are packed with melanin, the same pigment that protects human skin from UV rays. Only this fungus cranks that up to 11. The melanin in cryomyces helps absorb radiation and neutralize reactive particles that would shred most living cells. On top of that, its thick cell walls help keep it from dying out or breaking apart in space. Next on the list is Halomonas titanica, or Titanicae. This one's not a space traveler yet, but it's still living in an environment that would kill most forms of life. This is a type of bacteria that's been discovered eating away at the metal hull of the Titanic 12,500 feet under the ocean. Down there, the pressure is over 380 times what it is at sea level, and there's no sunlight, barely any oxygen, and the water's freezing cold. In other words, a nightmare for most life forms, but not this bacteria. What makes H. titanica special isn't just that it survives those brutal conditions, it's built for them. It feeds on iron and slowly breaks down the Titanic's metal, forming these weird icicle-like formations aptly called rusticles. Scientists think the Titanic will be nothing but a rust stain in a few decades, unfortunately, thanks to this bacteria. But researchers are studying it to understand how it could help with what's called bioremediation, which is the process of using living organisms like bacteria or plants to clean up pollution. Imagine using bacteria to safely eat away at old oil rigs and shipwrecks and even waste left in space. So if you've ever seen a weird blob of jelly on the ground after it rains and wondered what the hell it is, well, it's star jelly, aka nostoc. It's a cyanobacterium, an ancient type of life form that's been around for over 3.5 billion years. When the environment gets too dry or too cold, it dries up into a kind of dormant state, basically goes to sleep and shuts down most of its normal functions. While it's in this state, it can survive without water and is protected from things like heat, cold, and radiation. When things finally improve, like when it rains, wakes back up and starts growing again. Not an animal, not a plant, not a fungus, slime mold is basically this brainless blob that can solve mazes? Yes, it looks like something out of an 80s horror movie, but it's one of the weirdest and most intelligent forms of life on Earth. It has no brain, no nervous system, and yet it can solve complex problems like finding the shortest path through a maze. It's nuts. Scientists have used it to model transportation networks because it's that good at efficiency. But what makes it a good candidate for space is that it thrives in darkness, doesn't mind radiation, and it can enter a dormant state when the environment gets too harsh. In 2021, slime mold was sent to the International Space Station in an experiment to study its behavior in microgravity. It didn't just survive, it kept moving, growing, and navigating its surroundings like it was still on Earth. Some researchers think it's one of the best examples we've got of how simple life might survive and even think in space. It may look like a puddle of rotten mustard, but this stuff is tough and surprisingly clever. It is one of those "what the hell am I looking at" moments. It was filmed in Santa Fe, New Mexico sometime last summer, but that's about all we know. I really don't know how to explain what this thing is. Doesn't appear to be fully human, but I mean, maybe it is, I don't know. Now, New Mexico is no stranger to strange sightings. It's got a long history of chupacabra reports, the goat-sucking cryptid that's said to drain livestock. Sightings of these creatures pop up all across the Southwest, into Mexico, and even parts of South America. So naturally, people are wondering if this thing caught on camera could be a chupacabra. Others think it looks like a skinwalker caught mid-transformation. Whatever it is though, I can say for sure that I don't like it, and if I were living out there in Santa Fe and saw something like this slinking around, I'd be rethinking my zip code real fast. But what do you think? Real cryptid? Elaborate hoax? Let us know down below. This next clip comes from deep in the Amazon rainforest, and if you're one of those people who roll their eyes at the idea of 50-foot snakes, this might give you second thoughts. Now, at first it looks like just another shot of something slithering through murky water, nothing too out of the ordinary, probably a big anaconda, right? But then the camera zooms out and you start to realize just how massive this thing really is. Some people say it could be a modern-day Titanoboa, a prehistoric snake that was said to grow over 40 feet long. Supposedly extinct for millions of years, but who really knows with a place like the Amazon? It's one of the most unexplored regions on Earth. If a monster-sized snake was going to survive anywhere without being found, this is definitely the place. Now, sure, this could be a trick of the camera. Maybe the angle makes the snake look bigger than it is, but when you see something that looks like it came straight out of the Jurassic period, moving that smoothly through a real jungle river, it's hard not to wonder what else might be out there. Sometimes it feels like we've just barely scratched the surface. How would you like to see this thing creeping through your backyard? In this video shared by TikTok user CryptTalker, a weird pale creature is caught crawling through someone's backyard in the middle of the night. It's moving on all fours and it looks way too thin to be a normal person. Its limbs are long and kind of jerky, and there's something really off about how it moves. A lot of people instantly compared it to the Rake, the creepy internet legend that's been floating around since the early 2000s, and this thing definitely has a similar vibe. The creature in the video doesn't really do much, just crawling along, but man, does it give me the creeps. Looks like it shouldn't exist. Too thin and lanky to be a person, but unlike any animal I've ever seen. Back in 2012, a trail cam on Whiteman Hill in Wetzel County, West Virginia picked up something very strange. A woman named Kelly Morgan submitted photos from her brother's deer camera that seemed to show a pale ghost-like figure wandering through the woods at night. According to Morgan, there's an old local legend about a young bride who was killed on her wedding day and that her spirit is said to roam the woods. She said her aunt told her the story, but it's mostly passed around as hearsay. Still, digging into the area's ghost tales, Morgan found a disturbing version of the story. Around 1882, 3 men allegedly took a young girl to a remote spot near Whiteman Hill, and after tormenting her, they hanged her. There is a small cemetery nearby that some think might be connected as well. The idea of a ghost bride fits into a much bigger pattern in folklore. Susan Dahl, co-author of Haunted Tales from the Holler, hadn't heard this exact story, but she did note how common ghost bride tales are. saying they are so common you could call them a bona fide subcategory. This has become a pretty famous image, right up there with the infamous Nessie photograph. This is supposedly photographic evidence of a creature called Champ that lives in Lake Champlain. There have been over 300 reported sightings of the creature over the years, but in 1977, amateur photographer Sandra Manzi spotted something sticking its head out of the water and snapped the now famous photo. Some describe Champ or Champy as a snake-like creature, others say it's like an aquatic dinosaur, something like a plesiosaur. Champ has become a full-on local celebrity though. In Port Henry, New York, they built a giant statue of it. There's even a Champ Day festival every year. Businesses in the area, car washes, diners, gift shops, slap Champ on their logos, and Vermont's minor league baseball team is literally called the Lake Monsters, with Champ as the mascot. It's a modern day mythical creature and people keep watching the lake, hoping to be the next to spot it. This next video comes out of Puerto Rico, captured on a hotel security camera. Take a look at this. That was kinda nuts. Definitely not a gust of wind. Something very clearly tugged at her hair. We just can't see what it was. Now, this hotel was built over one that had burnt down in 1986, and it's become kinda infamous for its paranormal activity. Guests and staff will say they hear disembodied voices and footsteps or see weird shadows moving about, the usual ghostly flair. But this isn't just spooky, it's rude and incredibly annoying. Whoever this ghost is, they deserved to die in that fire if that's how they go around behaving. This next photo comes from Reddit user Dan_Cukes, who writes, "My brothers and I went hammock backpacking in Pennsylvania last weekend. I was going through photos from the trip and started editing this one for an Instagram post. It wasn't long until I realized there was this incredibly human-like apparition / figure behind the campfire smoke just watching us. We never saw anything the whole day and night we were there, and we were 5 miles or so deep in the woods with no one around. It was a mile or so away from a small overgrown trail, so we were confident we'd be left alone. We don't know what to think of this and are pretty shook up over it." This eerie image was posted online by Reddit user Druzy. Looking closely, you can see a pale face with its mouth wide open peering out the bottom of the window. Now, on its own, the image isn't all that amazing, but if the story attached to it is to be believed, it definitely makes for a creepy post. Druzy wrote, "I took this picture sometime in 2013. We'd always experienced things in this apartment. Footsteps, doors closing, lights on and off, blinds always falling off the window, but we never actually saw anything. I was on my way to work one day when I noticed the blinds in my room pressed against the window as if someone was spreading them apart. I snapped a picture to show my mom later, like, hey, look, the blinds were weird, like someone was pressing against them. Never been able to explain the face in the window though. There was nobody home except for my dog." This is a photograph of a beastly animal that was burnt alive by this group of brave men, the Hodag. This story comes out of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, a small town in the north of the state. It all started back in the 1890s when a local timber cruiser named Eugene Shepard came out saying that he'd come across this terrifying creature in the woods. According to his description, it had, quote, the head of a frog, the grinning face of a giant elephant, thick short legs set off by huge claws, the back of a dinosaur, and a long tail with spears at the end. Shepard claimed they had to use dynamite just to kill the beast. He'd even released a photo of the charred remains, calling it the, quote, fiercest, strangest, most frightening monster ever to set razor-sharp claws on the earth. In 1896, Shepard said that he captured another Hodag alive with help from a few bear wrestlers and a chloroform-soaked pole. He showed the thing off at the Oneida County Fair and at his own home, where he'd rigged it to move using wires just to scare people for fun. Yeah, the whole thing was a hoax. Shepard was kind of known as the town prankster, and the fun ended when scientists from the Smithsonian said they were coming to investigate. At that point, Shepard finally admitted he'd made the whole thing up. But by then, the Hodag had already become a local legend, and the I just had to include this one. It was just too fun a story. So this farmer in India walked out onto his property to see this massive snake that had just finished swallowing one of his cows. Look at the giant bulge right in the middle of the snake's body. Instead of running away, the farmer actually grabbed a rope and lassoed the snake, just threw it right over the middle of his body like he was wrangling a steer. I don't know what kind of nerves that guy has, but if I were in his boots, I'd have quit farming on the spot. I would be halfway across the country before even thinking about coming back. The clip's been shared around a lot online, and people are still debating what kind of snake this was. Some say it might have been a green anaconda, which do get very big. Others think it was something even bigger though, maybe something not officially documented. Certainly looks like it to me, but thankfully I do not live in a country where there are massive poisonous snakes stalking the forests, so not too familiar. But with all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video. A two-headed brown trout was found in a creek in southern Idaho, and it wasn't the only deformed fish in the area. Scientists found more trout with facial deformities, twisted fins, and defective eggs, and it all pointed to one thing: selenium pollution. Selenium is a metal that shows up naturally in the environment, but when it builds up from things like mining or coal burning, it becomes toxic. In this case, the pollution was traced back to operations run by J.R. Simplot, a massive agribusiness company that processes food and chemicals. They funded a study to look into the deformities, and while the report claimed that the selenium levels were safe, others strongly disagreed. Joseph Scorapa, a wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, said the study was biased and, quote, highly questionable. He pointed out that it completely skipped over the effects on birds and reptiles and seriously downplayed the deformity rates in fish. Meanwhile, in Tennessee, politicians started pushing bills to deregulate selenium altogether. See, the coal industry has a stake in this too. What's happening in one Idaho creek is just one part of a much bigger picture. There's this fish called the Clear Lake hitch that only lives in Clear Lake, California, and some of them have developed a mutation known as pug-headedness, which you can probably form a pretty clear image of in your head. They end up with steep, almost boxy foreheads, bulging eyes, and an underdeveloped upper jaw. Basically, the top half of the mouth doesn't grow right, so it ends up shorter than the bottom, making the whole face look warped. Scientists think this is thanks to pollution, mainly from pesticides and mercury that have built up in the lake over time. The hitch used to be everywhere in this area. They were a big part of the diet for indigenous tribes like the Pomo, and back in the day you could see massive runs every spring. These days, even in a good year, only a few thousand show up to spawn. Some years, barely any. Out in the middle of the Mojave Desert, there's this tiny deep pool called Devil's Hole. It looks like just a weird blue hole in the ground surrounded by dry rocks, but it's actually a deep water-filled crack in the earth, kind of like a natural well. And inside this tiny pool lives one of the rarest fish in the world, the Devil's Hole pupfish. These fish are tiny, smaller than your pinky finger, and they've been living here for thousands of years. The water is warm, nearly 90 degrees, and has very little oxygen. The fish need that exact setup to survive. It's a very specific environment, but they've adapted perfectly. Until recently. Right now, there are only about 75 of these fish left, and scientists are worried. Their genes are a mess. Scientists have found what's called genetic load. Basically, these fish are drowning in bad DNA, and there's no way for natural selection to clean it out. This leads to what's called an extinction vortex, where the genetic problems make it even harder to survive. Back in the 70s, conservationists built backup tanks to protect the pupfish in case the wild ones died out. But at one of these tanks, some pupfish from a nearby but different species snuck in. Their babies mixed with the DNA and grew way faster and healthier, even sprouting extra fins. The hybrids exploded in number, which showed biologist Andy Martin that introducing new genes was probably the solution here. Martin thinks the Devil's Hole pupfish could be saved if they bring in a few of these cousins from a spring just a few miles away. But some conservationists hate this idea. To them, it's not really saving this specific species of fish if you're changing their DNA. Nanosilver. That sounds like an anime attack, but this is a real particle causing mutations in fish. Silver nanoparticles, tiny particles smaller than viruses, are used in over 200 consumer products because they kill bacteria on contact. Scientists are now worried these little particles might be messing with the environment and wildlife. When silver nanoparticles wash down drains, they end up in rivers, lakes. Darren Ferguson, a researcher at the University of Utah, tested these particles on zebrafish embryos in the lab and found some pretty scary mutations. Some of them became, quote, extremely distorted, almost making a number 9 or a comma instead of a linear fish, he said. The particles caused deformities in eyes, tails, and most disturbingly, their hearts. And here's something pretty scary. Zebrafish actually have organs kinda similar to ours, so this could hint at risks for people too. Scientists still don't know exactly what this means for us or the planet long term, but the Environmental Protection Agency said the same special properties that make nanoscale materials useful are also properties that may cause some nanoscale materials to pose potential risks. In California's Kesterson Reservoir, a big environmental problem popped up because of selenium pollution. Selenium is a naturally occurring element, but when it builds up too much, it becomes toxic. In Kesterson, the water got contaminated with high selenium levels, mainly from irrigation runoff. The fish there, especially embryos, started coming out with serious deformities. Some had messed up eyes or were just missing them completely. There were deformities in their fins, the brain. Scientists call this cluster of problems Kesterson syndrome. And it's not limited to fish because the birds eating them also suffered. Birds have been found with deformed beaks, legs, wings. In Oneida Lake, New York, walleye fish started appearing with tumors. This comes from exposure to chlorinated wastewater effluent. That's water discharged from treatment plants containing chlorine byproducts. So these chemicals don't break down easily and can build up in the lake. These tumors are obviously a sign that pollution in the lakes has carcinogenic effects, meaning it can cause cancer. Walleye are especially important too because they're popular for fishing, so this is worrying not only scientists but fishermen and the communities who depend on the lake. Back in the 70s, a coal-fired power plant in North Carolina started dumping wastewater full of selenium into Bellows Lake. Over time, it completely wrecked the fish population. By the early 2000s, the number of fish species in the lake dropped from 24 down to just 6. Most of the fish couldn't reproduce anymore. One study found that 19 of the original 20 species couldn't produce any surviving offspring. Only smaller fish that ate plankton, like mosquito fish, managed to stick around. They weren't affected as badly by the selenium buildup. Eventually, the plant stopped dumping the waste into the lake in 1986. Levels of selenium in the water dropped way down, and they even restocked the lake with sport fish like bass and bluegill. But even 10 years later, the fish were still having trouble reproducing. That's because selenium sinks to the lake bed and slowly leaks back into the food chain, especially if storms stir up the sediment. To make things even worse, some illegally introduced Alabama bass in 2011. They started out-competing the native bass, especially largemouth. Now state officials are trying to get rid of them by removing catch limits, but the damage is already being done. In the Great Lakes, especially Lake Ontario and Lake Michigan, scientists have seen lake trout hatching with strange deformities. They found fish with weird faces, swollen yolk sacs, which are the little sacs attached to fish embryos that hold the nutrients they need to grow, and they have bloated areas around the heart, symptoms known as blue sac disease. It's caused by exposure to dioxins and toxic chemicals that build up in the water over years from things like industrial waste and pesticides. These toxins settle in the sediment but work their way up the food chain. Fish at the top, like lake trout, get hit hardest because they eat smaller, contaminated fish. The damage mostly shows up in the embryos, so it's affecting reproduction more than anything else. Many of the baby fish just don't survive. These deformities were first spotted decades ago and are still showing up in areas where dioxin levels are high. Even though regulations have cut down on the amount of dioxins going into the lakes, the old contamination is still there. Now, we've talked about all the bad stuff going on with fish, but what about some interesting adaptations? Well, Atlantic tomcod in the Hudson River developed a mutation that lets them survive in waters full of toxins. For decades, the river was basically a chemical dumping ground. Chemicals that usually kill or will seriously harm fish, but scientists have noticed that tomcod have developed a genetic mutation that changed how they process pollutants. Normally, these chemicals get into a fish's cells and start causing damage, but this mutation messes with the pathway the pollutants usually use. Instead, the fish store the toxins in their fat, basically locking them away where they can't cause a whole lot of harm. This trait didn't show up everywhere. It's specific to tomcod that live in polluted water. The downside, though, is that these fish are now heavily specialized to survive in dirty, polluted water. If the environment changes again, even if it's for the better, they might not adapt fast enough. And they're still concerned about predators eating them and taking in those same toxins up the food chain, including people who eat the fish. Killfish are tiny, colorful fish found along the East Coast, often in places no other fish would want to be, like New Jersey's Newark Bay or Virginia's Elizabeth River, where there's a lot of toxic waste. These areas are loaded with dioxins and heavy metals, but somehow killfish are doing pretty well, all things considered. Turns out they've evolved an insane resistance, up to 8,000 times more than normal. Researchers collected hundreds of killfish from different polluted sites and sequenced their genomes. And what they found was that each population had developed similar mutations in the same genes that basically turned off the normal response to these toxins. This kind of resistance is only possible because killfish have super high genetic diversity. For other species that don't have that kind of variation, adapting like this isn't really an option. Again though, there's still food for birds and bigger fish, so there's still a lot of worry as to how all that stored up pollution could affect the rest of the food chain. Japanese sailors had plenty to worry about when they set out to sea: storms, shipwrecks, the pure vastness of the unknown, but nothing unsettled them quite like the umibozu, said to be this massive, shadowy entity that would rise up from the ocean on calm nights, a towering black shape with no real features other than its glowing white eyes. Not the type of tentacled or serpentine sea creature you usually picture, and it didn't act like one either. It wouldn't attack right away. Instead, it would demand a barrel from the crew, and if they gave it one, it would use it to then scoop water into their ship until they sank. If they refused, well, things didn't end much better. It's kind of a lose-lose situation. No one really knows where the legend comes from originally, but some say that umibozu is the ghost of a drowned monk, cursed to haunt the sea forever. Others think it's more of a warning, a way to explain how fast things can turn deadly out in the open water. In some versions, it only shows up when someone on board has angered the gods, meaning if you saw one, your fate was already sealed. The Lusca is a creature that haunts the waters off the Caribbean. Once again, this thing probably doesn't look like anything you're imagining. It's said to be half shark, half octopus. Some even describe it having 3 sharks' heads, so a pretty bizarre looking monster and equally as terrifying. It lurks in the dark depths of underwater caves, ready to drag unsuspecting swimmers or boats down into the water. Local fishermen and sailors who spent too much time on the water often share these chilling stories about close encounters with it. Many sightings of the Lusca have been reported near the blue holes of Andros Island in the Bahamas. One of the most famous incidents happened on January 18th of 2011, when what appeared to be the body of this giant octopus washed up on Grand Bahama Island. Witnesses said that the remains looked like just a part of the creature's head and mouth, and the rest of the body missing. Based on what they saw though, local fishermen who were familiar with octopus anatomy estimated that this creature, if intact, would have measured between 20 and 30 feet long when alive. The description of this next creature is pretty strange, but it actually has roots in real-life reports. It's called Steller's sea ape. It was first described by Georg Wilhelm Steller, a German naturalist who came across it during an expedition to the Bering Sea in the 18th century. According to Steller, the creature was seen in the waters near the Commander Islands, a remote part of Russia. What makes it so strange? Well, it was described as this mix between a primate and a seal, an ape-like creature with the body of a seal, complete with dark fur, a wide mouth, and a flat nose. Some reports say it had a tail like a seal's, but with the arms of a monkey even. I told you this one was going to be strange. The sea ape was said to have been spotted in the wild swimming and occasionally popping its head out of the water. There's a theory that it could have been a type of extinct or undiscovered sea mammal, a creature that went extinct before scientists could get a proper chance to identify it. Trunco is another weird one. It's the nickname given to an animal reportedly seen off the coast of Margate, South Africa, on October 25, 1924. The creature was first noticed battling two killer whales, which allegedly fought with it for about 3 hours. Witnesses claim the strange creature used its tail to fend off the whales and even managed to lift itself out of the water by 20 feet at one point. After the battle, the creature's carcass washed ashore on Margate Beach, where it remained for 10 days. The animal was said to be around 47 feet long, 10 feet wide, and 5 feet high, and had a trunk about 5 feet long and 14 inches in diameter, and a tail that measured about 10 feet. One of the most unusual features was its snowy white fur, which was about 8 inches long. Interestingly, the trunk was also attached directly to the torso with no head visible. This led British cryptozoologist Carl Schuker to dub the creature Trunco in his 1996 book, The Unexplained. Ogopogo is the mysterious creature said to live in Lake Okanagan, British Columbia. Described as a serpent-like monster with a long, undulating body, the creature has been part of local folklore for centuries. Indigenous tribes around the lake have long spoken of a water monster said to control the waters, creating waves and whirlpools to drag people under. The first European sighting was recorded in 1872, but the legend really gained traction in the 1920s. Since then, there have been numerous reports with witnesses claiming to see this large creature with humps rising out of the water, sometimes with this horse-like head and reptilian features. Some skeptics argue that Ogopogo is just a misidentified sturgeon or a floating log, but the fact is, sightings just continue to this day. Could it be some prehistoric survivor, a remnant of creatures like the plesiosaur or a giant eel? Hafgufa is a creature that has its roots in Norse mythology, described as a giant sea monster, often said to be the size of a whole island, lurking in the waters of the North Atlantic. Some stories depict it as a whale-like creature, others say it's a type of sea serpent. It's often associated with the kraken, and some believe they could be the same creature, just with different interpretations. According to the sagas, Hafgufa is so large that its movements could stir up dangerously huge waves, making it a threat to sailors in the region. In fact, it was said that it could swallow entire ships whole with just one gulp. The name Hafgufa is believed to come from Old Norse, meaning sea gulp, which of course fits perfectly with the idea of this creature swallowing anything in its path. Organism 46b is a mysterious creature that became famous after being allegedly discovered in Antarctica, described as a massive, shape-shifting octopus-type being, said to be able to manipulate its surroundings with its tentacles. Some reports even claim that it can hypnotize its prey, paralyzing them with this strange mind-controlling ability. The creature was supposedly discovered by a Russian scientific expedition in 2004. They were investigating the icy waters beneath the Antarctic ice shelf. According to the tale, the team encountered this creature in a submerged lake, with the monster being able to grow to over 30 feet long. The creature is said to have the ability to mimic other creatures, allowing it to blend into its environment or appear as a completely different organism to fool predators or prey. The whole thing got attention after an expedition member supposedly shared the tale online, but there's still no solid proof. It's become something of a Russian government cover-up conspiracy. The Ningen is one of the most bizarre creatures in modern cryptozoology. Allegedly, it lives in the icy waters around Antarctica. Most reported sightings come from Japanese sailors. The Ningen is described as a humanoid sea creature with this pale white body that some say resembles a giant twisted version of a human. That's what makes this thing so creepy. The creature is said to be massive, often reported to be around 20 to 30 meters long or 65 to 98 feet, with a head, arms, and legs, but no real distinct facial features. The first report came about in the early 2000s when Japanese fishermen and crew members of research ships started talking about sightings of this bizarre thing. Some say they've seen it swimming near the ship or breaching the surface like a whale. What makes the Ningans so creepy isn't just its size or its appearance, but the way it seems to avoid any form of human contact, keeping its distance and vanishing as quickly as it appears. The Kraken is one of the most infamous sea monsters in folklore, often depicted as this giant octopus or squid type thing that terrorizes sailors by dragging entire ships under the sea. The legend dates back to the 18th century. Stories of a colossal creature lurking off the coasts of Norway and Greenland. Like with many legendary creatures, there are different descriptions, but it's usually said to be so massive that its tentacles can reach out and capsize ships with a single swipe. Some sailors even reported seeing the Kraken's huge arms rise above the surface like a massive wall, causing a storm of panic before the ship was dragged into the deep. The Kraken seems about as outlandish as it gets, but here's the thing. It may not actually be pure fiction. Some think that what these sailors were describing may have actually been giant squids, which can grow to over 40 feet long. The Leviathan. Pretty much the ultimate sea monster, one that's haunted our collective imagination for centuries, even if we don't know it. It comes from ancient texts, most famously the Bible, where it's depicted as this fearsome sea serpent, which has really become the archetype for all monstrous sea creatures. The description varies depending on who's telling the story, but it's often depicted as this enormous dragon-like beast with scales tough enough to withstand the toughest of weapons. Some tales paint it as a creature of chaos, one that could swallow ships whole or cause storms to wreck entire fleets. The name Leviathan comes from the Hebrew Bible, where it's described as an ancient creature of the deep, sometimes associated with destruction and darkness. Over the centuries, it's been linked to the sea itself, a symbol of the unknown and the powerful forces of nature that sailors feared most. Imagine creatures that have been around since the time of the dinosaurs and even before, and are still alive today. The velvet worm, a bizarre little predator that traps prey with sticky goo. The lungfish, a fish that can breathe air and survive in drought by burrowing into mud. And the nautilus, a living fossil that's been around for over 500 million years. These are ancient creatures still alive today. Some of the most incredible creatures on Earth have been around for millions of years. The eerie monkfish, with its fishing pole lure, to a creature living in freezing waters with a 1,000-year lifespan. And the gharial, with its unique snout designed for catching fish. These are ancient creatures still alive today. Well, this is a strange-looking creature. It's called the velvet worm. These odd but cute little creatures have been around for over 500 million years. Their appearance hasn't changed much. If you've ever seen one, you might think it's a cross between a worm and an insect, but it's neither. It's in its own branch on the tree of life. And I think I get what makes them sorta cute. It's their soft, velvety bodies. They almost look like little fairy tale creatures. Velvet worms are typically about 2 to 10 centimeters long and have segmented bodies with tiny legs that allow them to move slowly across the forest floor. They don't look like it, but they also hunt in a very interesting way. They don't chase down their prey. Instead, they shoot out this sticky adhesive substance from glands near their heads to trap smaller animals. Then they walk over to their prey and eat it alive, using their sharp mandibles to chew through the body. The adhesive can be so strong that the worm can capture animals several times its size. The reason they've survived this long, seemingly unchanged, is partly thanks to their incredibly efficient hunting style. They've found a niche that works perfectly well for them, so there's no need to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Lungfish are some of the oldest creatures to have ever lived on Earth, dating back more than 400 million years. These fish are often considered the closest living relatives to the first creatures that made the transition from water to land. They've evolved a set of highly specialized traits that allow them to survive in environments where other fish just wouldn't. Lungfish can breathe air. A fish that can breathe air. How wild is that? While most fish use gills to extract oxygen from water, lungfish have both gills and lungs, so they can survive in low oxygen environments like stagnant ponds or dried up riverbeds. And when there's a drought, some species of lungfish can even bury themselves in mud and enter this almost hibernation state, breathing air through their lungs until water returns. Gee, I wonder why these things have survived for hundreds of millions of years. While other fish species may have been wiped out during mass extinctions, lungfish have adapted to survive, making them one of the longest living groups of fish. So, cheers to them. The nautilus is one of the most iconic creatures from the deep. When you look at paintings of ancient sea life amongst all the scary extinct monsters, you'll usually see these things as well, but they're still around. The nautilus has been swimming the oceans for over 500 million years. If you've ever seen one, you'll immediately recognize the spiral shell-like structure that it's famous for. The nautilus belongs to an ancient group of cephalopods, which also includes modern squids, octopuses, and cuttlefish. But unlike its more evolved relatives, the nautilus hasn't changed much. It's sometimes called a living fossil, as it's considered one of the oldest species still around today. These things have survived through massive extinction events, and one of the reasons it's managed to stick around for so long is that it's very adaptable in its diet. Nautiluses are opportunistic feeders, scavenging on dead fish, and crustaceans, and smaller marine life. They're also known to hunt smaller fish using their tentacles. But that shell, it's just beautiful, and a big part of that is because it follows the Fibonacci sequence, a pattern that appears a lot, from the branching of trees to the arrangement of petals and flowers. Sturgeons are massive fish that have been around for more than 200 million years. They were here long before the dinosaurs and have survived through major shifts in the Earth's climate and environment. They're hard to miss. They can grow over 12 feet long and weigh up to 1,500 pounds. They're one of the largest species of fish alive today. Sturgeon are also known as living fossils. They have armored bodies covered in bony plates, and their long, pointy snouts are perfect for sifting through mud and sand in search of food. Unlike many other fish, sturgeons don't have teeth. Instead, they have a specialized structure known as barbels on their snouts, which they use to sense their prey. Sturgeons are bottom feeders, relying on their sense of touch and smell to find things like worms and small fish, again, in the mud down there. They also spend a significant part of their lives in fresh water, but then move to salt water to breed, which makes their life cycle very unique. The tuatara is also called a living fossil, and for good reason. Native only to New Zealand, this reptile is the last surviving member of an ancient order called Rhynchocephalia, a group that lived over 200 million years ago. Despite resembling a lizard, tuataras are not actually lizards, but they belong to the same reptile family. Their closest relatives went extinct a long time ago, and what makes the tuatara even more fascinating is its unique physiology. For example, they have a third eye on the top of their head. It's not very noticeable, but it is there, and it's known as a parietal eye, which is sensitive to light and helps regulate their circadian rhythm. It doesn't work like their other eyes, but it is pretty cool that it's there, and it connects them to more ancient reptiles when their ancestors had more complex ways of sensing things. Another fun fact, the tuatara is incredibly slow growing, and they can live for over 100 years. Monkfish, also known as anglerfish, are a bizarre and ancient species that have been lurking in the deep oceans for over 100 million years. They have a very unique and eerie appearance with their flat, wide bodies, their enormous mouths, the sharp teeth, the bumpiness. Monkfish just look like something from another time. They live in deep water where there's not much light, so they've developed an interesting survival tactic. They have a lure on their heads, a fleshy filament that they use to attract prey. The lure is similar to a fishing pole, and the monkfish dangles it in front of its mouth to attract smaller fish. When a potential meal gets too close, the monkfish strikes, using its large mouth to engulf the prey whole. These fish are excellent predators, capable of swallowing fish much larger than themselves. They're also super adaptable. They can live in all kinds of depths and at different parts of the ocean, so this mix of flexibility and clever hunting has helped them stick around as long as they have. Antarctic sponges are another incredible example of creatures that have survived for a very long time in some of the harshest environments on Earth. These sponges can live for hundreds, even thousands of years, making them some of the oldest living creatures in the animal kingdom. So why do they live so long? Well, it's a result of the frigid environment, which slows their metabolism. In fact, some Antarctic sponges have been found to grow less than 1 millimeter per year, meaning they can take thousands of years to reach their full size. They're found in the icy waters of Antarctica, surviving in a region where very few other species can handle the freezing temperatures and the constant darkness. Something else very strange about these things is they don't rely on sunlight for energy. Instead, they feed on microscopic plankton and bacteria that drift through the water. Antarctic sponges are also super important for the health of the ecosystem. They provide habitats for other organisms, and they play an important role in recycling nutrients. The gharial is a large crocodile-like reptile native to the rivers of the Indian subcontinent. They're the crocodiles that you've seen in nature documentaries, and you're like, oh wait, what the hell is that thing? Doesn't look like a normal crocodile. With that long, thin snout, it's definitely one of the most unique members of the crocodile family. Gharials have been around for over 200 million years, surviving through climate changes and massive shifts in the Earth's ecosystems. They're specialized fish eaters. Their weird snouts are just perfectly suited for catching fish. They use their sharp teeth to grab slippery fish with incredible speed. Unlike other crocodiles, gharials don't need to chase down their prey on land. They just lurk underwater, waiting for the right moment to strike. Their snouts make them highly adaptable for life in rivers, where they often swim with their bodies submerged while keeping only their eyes and nostrils above water. Unfortunately, despite how ancient these things are, the gharial is now critically endangered, with only a few hundred of them left. Horseshoe crabs are another ancient creature that's been around for over 450 million years. Now, horseshoe crabs aren't true crabs, they're actually more closely related to spiders and scorpions, which is odd. These things have a hard horseshoe-shaped exoskeleton and long tails that they use to steer and maintain balance in the ocean. They live in shallow coastal waters, where they feed on small creatures like worms and algae. What's truly nuts about horseshoe crabs, though, is their unique bodily fluids. It contains a substance called hemolymph, which is used in a special test for bacterial contamination in medical devices and vaccines. This test is critical for making sure pharmaceutical products are safe, so horseshoe crabs have still found a way to be helpful after hundreds of millions of years. And their BLOOD, it's also blue, so that's pretty cool. As you can imagine though, because it's so useful in modern medicine, it's also quite sought after, and over-harvesting has put horseshoe crab populations at risk, making them another ancient species that may not be around forever. The coelacanth is perhaps the most famous living fossil of them all. These deep-sea fish were thought to have gone extinct with the dinosaurs around 65 million years ago, but in 1938, a fisherman off the coast of South Africa pulled up a specimen, shocking the scientific world. These things are the definition of living fossils. They've barely changed since they first appeared over 400 million years ago. These guys have very unusual fins. Unlike most fish, coelacanths have paired lobed fins, which are believed to be the ancestors of the limbs that would eventually evolve in land animals. These fins are highly flexible, and when the coelacanth swims, it moves its fins in this graceful, alternating motion, almost like it's walking on the seafloor. This adaptation has led scientists to believe that coelacanths could hold the key to understanding how some of the earliest creatures on Earth made that transition from water to living on land. Coelacanths are incredibly rare, living at depths of 200 to 2,000 feet in the Indian Ocean.
In early 2024, a team of scientists working with the Waorani people in Ecuador came across what looked like a typical green anaconda until they ran the DNA. Turns out it wasn't the same species at all. It's now been named the northern green anaconda, and genetically it's about 5.5% different from the one we already knew about. That might not sound like much, but in evolutionary terms, that's a 10 million year separation. I was surprised by that too. This thing is huge. The team spotted one female that was over 20 feet long, and some locals claim they've seen them closer to 25 feet, weighing more than a half ton. It lives in remote rivers stretching from Ecuador to Venezuela, and has pretty much gone unnoticed by science until now. They mostly feed on big prey, and by big prey I mean like deer and caimans, which are basically like a type of alligator. So yeah, these things are massive. The green anaconda stays underwater for long stretches. They're definitely not easy to spot, and unfortunately their territory overlaps with areas being torn up by oil drilling and illegal logging. The same researchers who found the snake also pointed out high levels of pollution in the water from petroleum waste, which could be slowly poisoning these animals. So yeah, the biggest snake ever found might already be at risk of extinction, and we only just learned it existed. Meanwhile, all you snake haters are clapping and cheering. I know you're out there. It's okay. I see you. This species was only officially described this year. It was found in the Brazilian Amazon jungle near the Juruá River. It's tiny, barely the size of your thumb, and unlike the last entry on this list, these creatures stand out because of their vibrant colors. Deep coppery limbs, a reddish-brown body, and thin blue stripes running down their backs. Scientists named it Renitomea etherea, which roughly means heavenly in Latin. Researchers said that discovering it in such an untouched remote area felt surreal, which completely makes sense. I mean, on one hand, it makes sense to find a new animal in a place where barely any human being has set foot, but I just mean it must have felt like they were stepping into another world. This new species belongs to the poison dart frog family, and like the others, it's toxic to the touch. That toxin comes from the things it eats, usually ants and mites. It's how these frogs protect themselves. This one in particular was only found in one small area, which makes it vulnerable right out of the gate. If anything changes in that spot, deforestation, drought, pollution, there is a good chance the whole species could disappear before we even get a chance to learn more about it. Also interesting, scientists noticed its call was different from nearby species, which could mean its mating habits or territorial behavior are totally unique too. So this thing looks like a giant worm, right? Want to know something really crazy though? It's not. It's actually an amphibian, a legless amphibian, a newly discovered species called the truncated caecilian. It was found in Ecuador in 2024. Technically, it sat in a museum for years before anyone realized what it was. After researchers dug back into the area it came from, they confirmed it was actually something totally new. This thing grows about 19 inches long, they have pale gray bodies, and their heads are kind of flattened out, hence the truncated part of the name. Let's talk about the teeth. What teeth, you may be asking? Allow me to explain, or shut off the video, I don't care. So these things actually have these curved back, needle-like teeth. It uses them to grab stuff and eat stuff like earthworms underground. These guys spend nearly their whole lives buried in the soil, which is why they're rarely seen and barely studied. There's still a ton we don't know about them. How do they reproduce? What's its full range? How many even exist? I don't know, if you're coming to me for answers, maybe rethink your life. While exploring Peru's Alto Mayo region in 2024, scientists found a weird little rodent that lives part of its life in water. Yes, that is right, folks. We have a mouse that swims. It goes against everything I have ever learned about mice growing up, and believe me, I learned a lot. It hasn't been officially named yet, but it's believed to belong to the genus Daptomus, a group of semi-aquatic rodents. These critters have partially webbed feet, a waterproof-looking coat, and a diet that probably includes aquatic insects. They only spotted it in one small, swampy patch of forest, so they are pretty rare. What's especially odd, though, is that the area it was found in isn't untouched jungle. People live and work nearby, so these weirdos, these freaks of nature, have been hiding out in plain sight all this time while we've been watching I don't know, what are people watching now? Anyways, it says something about how little we actually notice the creatures around us. No one knows yet if this is a totally new species or just a rarely seen one, but either way it's a pretty wild find. It also shows how even well-trodden parts of the Amazon are still weird as hell. In 2024, scientists working in Bolivia's upper Madiri River confirmed that they'd found a new species of piranha. Thank God, we all wanted a new one. This new species is definitely sharp-toothed like the others, but there are a few things about it that set it apart. It's got a dark crescent-shaped spot on the base of its tail and a deep red anal fin edged in black. Don't ask me what an anal fin is, this is just what I read online from far more qualified people than myself. Sue me. They discovered this new species after catching a few in a lesser studied part of the river, and at a first glance it looked familiar, but the details didn't line up with any of the known species. Back in the lab, genetic tests confirmed that it hadn't been identified before. Researchers say it's part of a group known for aggressive feeding, but we still don't know much about this specific one, like how big they can get or how they can hunt. The point is, even a fish as infamous as the piranha can still surprise you with new branches on the family tree. Maybe don't go skinny dipping in the upper Madiri anytime soon. This one's for the spider people, all 12 of you around the world. In 2024, researchers in Ecuador found a brand new species of giant crab spider. It's part of the huntsman spider family, which are already known for being fast and too big. This one can stretch out around 5 inches with long orange legs tipped in brown, and I feel itchy just talking about it. What's interesting is how it hunts. Unlike web spiders, these guys don't sit and wait. They're stalkers. They move through the jungle a few feet off the ground, creeping silently, looking for prey. That kind of hunting style isn't typical for other spiders in its group, which is what tipped researchers off that this one might be something new. It's the first time a spider from this genus has been found in Ecuador, but others like it have shown up in parts of Central and South America. These guys were named after an Ecuadorian biologist who helped train the team that discovered it, which is a nice touch. My heart is warmed and grossed out because of the spiders. In 2023, scientists discovered a new species of parasitic wasp in the Peruvian Amazon. This wasp has a particularly large head. It's also parasitic, laying eggs inside other insects. Parasitic wasps like this sound disgusting, but they actually play a big role in controlling insect populations. They act as natural pest regulators, and the fact that they're around means there's a healthy ecosystem balance. This one's for anyone who thinks all snakes are huge and scary. In 2022, researchers in Ecuador's Amazon found a snake that barely hit 8 inches long. It is a new species of dwarf boa. It kind of looks like a baby version of a regular boa constrictor. Same coiled body, same rough pattern, but just mini. Don't let the size fool you, however. This thing is still a predator. It eats tiny frogs and lizards and probably anything else small and unlucky enough to cross its path. They found it in 2 places, which both make sense because they are both high biodiversity areas that don't get a lot of foot traffic. What is extra weird is that it's part of a group that is mostly found in the Caribbean, so what the hell is it doing in South America? That's still up for debate, but either way it shows just how little we actually know about what's crawling around out there. This tiny monkey was hiding in plain sight for years. Scientists only realized in 2021 that it is a completely separate species from the marmosets we already knew about. It is called Schneider's marmoset, and it actually lives in a small patch of rainforest in Brazil. You'd think a monkey with bright orange hands and feet, a silver chest and a black tail would stand out, but apparently not. Just blended in with its cousins until somebody finally took a closer look at the DNA and skull shape. Turns out this thing's been mislabeled the whole time. It's only about 9 inches tall, not counting the tail, and it's got that wide-eyed, I know something you don't monkey face. But here's the problem. It lives right in the middle of what they call the arc of deforestation. Basically, that's the edge of the Amazon where trees are getting wiped out left and right for cattle, soy, and other development. So yeah, we just figured out this little guy's been here all along and now it's already in trouble. The more forest gets cleared, the smaller their home gets. So we've got a monkey we didn't know existed with a super limited range living in one of the most threatened parts of the rainforest. That's not a great combo, but hey, at least now we know it's there. Better late than never, I guess? This frog was found in early 2024, but to get to it, scientists had to hike through steep, foggy mountains near the Brazil-Venezuela border. That part of the Amazon is so remote, you pretty much have to parachute in. This frog has a name that sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings, but it fits. The place they found it is nicknamed the Misty Mountains. This creature is small, brown, and doesn't look like much at first, but it lives right near the entrance of tarantula burrows, which is either extremely gutsy or extremely stupid. Either way, it's new to science. It's one of several new frog species they found in that area, which is carved up by ancient geological formations called tepus, basically flat-topped mountains that have been isolated for years. So it's not just the frog that's rare, it's even the land itself. Scientists think frogs like this one evolved to survive specifically in that misty, high-altitude jungle because they don't live anywhere else, which also means that if anything changes, like climate, humidity, even slight damage to the terrain, that could be it for them. There's no plan B for these guys. They've literally got one mountain, one tiny patch of mossy ground, and that's their whole world.
On camera. So this guy caught something really spooky on camera while motorbiking. TikToker Moat Owens was riding through a forest trail as the sun was setting. He was pretty deep into the trail, which he said seemed to go on forever. And he comes to a fork in the path. Then he notices something strange. It's eerily quiet.
Holy crap, dude, this trail going on forever.
He sits there for a few moments, trying to decide which path to take, before he spots something poking out of the brush. Take a look at this. As soon as he sees the thing, he rightly zips back in the direction he came from, but not before struggling to get his bike started like he's stuck in a monster movie or one of those awful nightmares where you're being chased only to find that you've lost the ability to run. Pretty awful. A man named Jose in Fresno, California had a security camera outside his home, mainly to keep an eye on people messing with his front lawn. Well, one night his dog started barking like crazy, so he went to check the camera footage, and what he saw completely threw him. It was a thin, pale white figure with long legs gliding across the lawn. It had no arms, no real body, it was just the two long, tube-like legs and something small connecting them at the top. It didn't move like a person or an animal, mainly because it didn't look like a person or an animal. Jose was freaked out and immediately woke up his brother. According to Jose, his brother went outside and found weird little footprints in the dirt. But when investigators finally got there, it had rained and whatever physical evidence was there was now gone. This was the first ever footage of what's been referred to as the Fresno Nightcrawler, or crawlers. Some folks have seen multiple of them at once. In July of 2022, a home security camera in Moorhead, Kentucky picked up something really weird. Something that looked like a pale, almost human-shaped figure moving through someone's backyard late at night. The creature was thin, with long arms and legs, and no visible clothes or fur. It didn't run or walk like a person, it just kind of crept through the yard in this slow, eerie motion. The homeowner released the clip online, and it was shared around everywhere, even news sites. A lot of people said it looked like some kind of rake. Others say this one has a bit of an alien vibe to it. The video was picked up by local news, including the Tribune, which simply labeled it as a bizarre backyard sighting. Nobody came forward with any clear explanation, and wildlife officials didn't release any statements about what it could have been. Internet theories went all over the place with this one, from a deformed deer walking upright, which is a bit of a stretch, to a sick person wandering around naked. That's much more plausible. Or maybe something straight out of The Descent. In October of 2023, two passengers were riding the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, a scenic train that runs through the Colorado wilderness, when one of them spotted something strange walking along a hillside. They pulled out their phone and started recording. What they caught was this figure walking upright across the slope. It wasn't a person in hiking gear. It was tall, bulky, covered in what looked like brown fur, turning at one point to look back toward the train. Some commenters pointed out that the remote location made this very unlikely that anyone would be out there pulling a prank. Others just said, well, it kind of just does look like a costume, but the video made national news and reopened the Bigfoot debate once again. A lot of folks also pointed out how well this thing moved on such steep terrain. For believers, this is one of the better modern Bigfoot sightings. Clear daylight, open view, but like always, what do you all think? In 2019, near Sioux Lookout in Ontario, Canada, Gino Mikas, an experienced hunter, was with his wife and grandson grouse hunting when they heard this eerie howl coming from deep in the trees. Take a listen to this. Now, thinking it might be a moose, Mikas started recording with his phone, but as the howls continued, and they do go on throughout the entire clip, it growing louder and more aggressive, it was very clear that this wasn't anything he'd heard before. Now, keep this in mind, guys. He's been hunting all his life, and he said the sound didn't match anything native to the area. Could this be a legit recording of Bigfoot? Two friends were hiking in British Columbia when they captured something they couldn't quite explain. They spotted this figure walking upright across a snowy ridge. It's distant, but the people behind the camera say they had a much clearer view in person, and what they saw didn't make any sense. See, the terrain was tough. Deep snow, steep drop-offs, no obvious trail, but the figure was moving so smoothly and quickly, without snowshoes, without a backpack, and seemingly wearing all one color. Now, anyone who has ever tried to walk through that kind of snow knows that it's nearly impossible without gear. They said the thing was bipedal, fast, and didn't look like a bear. They admitted the most logical explanation might be it was just some lone, seriously hardcore hiker, but what if that wasn't the case? The closest route down the mountain was a 300-meter sheer drop, and they didn't have climbing gear to follow it. So whether it was a Sasquatch, a fearless snow hiker, or something else, it left them unsettled enough to post online, and a number of people have commented about how much distance this thing manages to cover on such harsh terrain in such a short span of time. Known locally as the Lagerflot worm, this creature is Iceland's answer to the Loch Ness Monster. Said to live in the icy depths of Lake Lagerflot, the beast is described as massive, up to 40 feet long, and not sleek like your typical idea of a sea serpent. Instead, it's said to have a series of large, visible humps. Reports of the creature go all the way back to 1345, and sightings have trickled in over the centuries. In 1963, the head of Iceland's National Forest Service claimed that he saw it with his own eyes. In 1998, a teacher and a group of students said they saw it as well. The most interesting incident might have happened in 1983 when a group of workers were laying a telephone cable near the eastern shore of the lake, and during their depth measurements, they detected this massive moving object deep beneath the surface. When they later retrieved the cable, it was snapped, and right at the spot where it had rested on whatever that thing was. Then in 2012, the story blew up again when a 67-year-old farmer recorded this video of something snake-like twisting and swimming in a river which flows directly into the lake. Next up is this clip here, the Harley Hoffman Bigfoot footage. I remember seeing this clip years ago. It was edited into an interview with Hoffman himself, who's a well-known Bigfoot enthusiast. Now, for a while I couldn't find the footage again, but recently it did pop back up. This is actual footage he claims to have shot, and honestly, it is pretty solid. You get a decent look at the creature. It doesn't come across like some dude stumbling around in a Party City gorilla suit. There's what looks like actual muscle definition under the fur, kind of like what you see in the famous Patterson-Gimlin footage. Now, yeah, the camera is a little shaky, but I mean, come on, if you suddenly ran into this thing in the woods, are you really gonna whip out this perfect, smooth, Kubrick-style tracking shot? I doubt it. The shakiness actually makes it feel more real, like something someone would capture in the middle of a, legit what the hell am I looking at moment. Now let's talk about the 1992 Grassman sighting. Grassman is the name Ohio locals have given to this big ape-like creature that's supposedly been spotted all over the state. This particular video was taken in eastern Ohio by a guy named Don Keating, who managed to capture what looked like a large hairy figure walking into the forest. The footage is, of course, super grainy. and he's pretty far away, so no, it's not crystal clear or anything, but there's definitely something moving through the trees. It's not the strongest video evidence out there. It's hard to tell exactly what you're looking at, but this video was passed around a lot back then, and there was a ton of debate surrounding it. That always makes things interesting. Plus, I just have a fondness for old VHS footage like this. It's just got this creepy, it adds something to it, I don't know. Now, what's interesting is that Keating said he was a skeptic before shooting this, but after the encounter, he changed his tune. And finally, we've got the Salt Fork Creature, another supposed clip of the Ohio Grassman. This video was uploaded to the YouTube channel We Do It Outdoors, and even though it's only about 10 minutes long, it is packed with material. So two guys were exploring Salt Fork State Park, also in eastern Ohio, when they started hearing weird noises, and that's when they caught footage of something big and hairy moving around in the trees. They follow this thing for a while and get some pretty cool footage, more than you usually get with videos like this. Now, if this is a costume, it's a pretty good one. The creature looks bulky. It's not like one of those flimsy, off-the-shelf gorilla suits, and what really makes this one stand out is that the footage is clear. There's no camera.
Creatures so rare, they seem stitched together by a special effects team. Tonight we're diving into documented moments where real animals were filmed bursting out of the ocean during violent weather. The morning after Hurricane Harvey sounded like a war zone, until someone noticed a mouthful of daggers half buried in the mud. When birder Preeti Deze walked Texas City Beach to survey storm damage, she found what looked like a fanged sea snake curled in a crater of sludge. Twitter sleuthing reached Dr. Kenneth Teege at the Smithsonian, who identified the corpse as a fang-toothed snake eel, a deep-sea ambush predator usually hiding 100 meters or 330 feet down. Harvey's 12-foot surge and 800-mile-per-hour winds effectively vacuumed the eel from its burrow and launched it ashore. Biologists noted that the soft, scaleless skin meant the eel would have shredded easily without the storm's sudden hydraulic punch, making Harvey one of the only reasons we've ever seen this species topside. Forget Hollywood hoaxes. This time the shark thrashing through a front yard was verified frame by frame. As Ian's storm surge turned cul-de-sacs into canals, resident Dominic Cameretta shot cell phone footage of a dorsal fin carving across floodwater outside his window. Snopes, marine biologists, and the Associated Press reviewed the clip and matched its outline to a juvenile black tip or bull shark displaced by a 12-foot surge. The fish, around 4 feet long, likely entered the flooded estuary chasing mullet, then rode the surge inland. When the waters receded, the shark was flushed back toward the river, but not before racking up 20 million TikTok views. Imagine walking on empty seabed only to spot two 1-ton mercows heaving for breath in the blazing sun. Hurricane Irma's low-pressure eye literally sucked Sarasota Bay out to sea, leaving bare mudflats and 2 adult manatees stranded like overturned trucks. Photos posted by locals went viral, summoning dozens of volunteers who rolled the 3-meter mammals onto tarps and slid them 100 meters back to deep water. Experts explained that rapid barometric drops can disorient manatees, which surface to breathe, and then they find the waterline suddenly gone. Thanks to quick community action, both animals survived, turning a potential tragedy into a feel-good rescue amid the Category 4 chaos. Anglers casting into chocolate brown surf suddenly watched a 16-foot shadow backflip beside the pier. 3 days after Hurricane Sally's eye wall shredded Alabama's coast, fishermen near Fort Morgan filmed a giant oceanic manta ray executing barrel rolls only 30 meters from shore. Normally roaming tropical open oceans, these giants follow plankton blooms. Sally's 20 inches of rain washed a banquet of nutrients into nearshore waters. Marine ecologists say the storm's churning mixed warm Gulf surface layers downward, creating the temperature gradient mantas prefer. The surprise cameo added storm-chasing manta to the list of Sally's bizarre side effects and offered researchers a rare northern Gulf sighting for the species tracking database. Lightning flashes, and in that split second you see a dinosaur coasting past your SUV. Tina Lambert Bennett's doorbell cam captured a 3.5 meter or 12-foot American alligator paddling down her flooded driveway as Hurricane Sally's surge surge peaked at 6 feet. Alligators tolerate brackish water for short periods, so coastal storms can lift them out of bayous and onto urban streets. Wildlife officials later tracked the reptile back to Little Lagoon marshland once waters subsided. A Reuters fact check traced the footage's origin after copycats falsely claimed it showed other storms, proof that Sally's viral gator remains the gold standard for see you later alligator content. Folklore says the sea gods send an oarfish before disaster. This one arrived just hours after a night of typhoon-driven waves. Villagers in Albi awoke to a 4-meter giant oarfish rippling like silver ribbon on the beach. The fish's fragile bones and scaleless body make it prone to injury from turbulent upwelling. Local legend claims oarfish herald earthquakes. Scientists counter that storm damage and pressure trauma are likelier culprits. Still, the rarity of seeing a deep-sea sea serpent alive made headlines worldwide, and fair enough. Seeing one of these things really makes you understand where the tales of sea serpents come from. Half the carcass was unfortunately sold at the fish market before biologists could secure samples, underscoring how quickly folklore can mix with fisheries when curiosity meets commerce. 3 brothers scouting dive spots nearly drove over a 14-foot giant squid sprawled across the asphalt. A fierce Antarctic blast pummeled Wellington's south coast, and the next low tide revealed a giant squid. Mantle 4.2 meters, tentacles shredded by rocks at Red Rocks Reserve. Divers Jack, Daniel, and Matthew Applin phoned NIWA scientists who measured beak size to confirm full adult status. Extreme low pressure systems can stun deep dwelling squid, causing fatal buoyancy loss that sends them rocketing to the surface like balloons. Samples from this individual fed into global DNA studies mapping giant squid populations, turning a freak beach day into a data windfall for cephalopod science. Subsea cameras caught an octopus literally white-knuckling basalt as 40-foot waves smashed the surface above. During November's bomb cyclone, Ocean Networks Canada's observatory at Folger Pinnacle filmed a giant Pacific octopus flattening itself against rock outcrops while currents whipped kelp sideways. The cephalopod folded its web between arms, reducing drag, a behavior scientists had hypothesized but never observed before. Sensors recorded dissolved oxygen drops and turbidity spikes, offering rare paired data on how extreme weather affects benthic hunters. When conditions calmed 18 hours later, the octopus released its death grip and glided off unscathed, proving storm survival is possible hundreds of feet down, especially if you have 8 anchors. Commuters thought the tentacled blob in the elevator bay was a Halloween prank until it darted for a floor drain. A seasonal king tide amplified by offshore squalls pushed seawater through storm water drains onto a multi-story garage on 14th Street in Miami Beach in 2016. Along for the ride was a common octopus roughly the size of a dinner plate. Photos hit Twitter, prompting city staff to trap the animal in a bucket and return it to the bay. Marine engineers later used the incident to illustrate how rising seas and heavier rain events can convert drainage systems into reverse fire hoses, complete with free swimming hitchhikers. Deputies responding to dune-crushing surf found a fish wider than an SUV pancaked in ankle-deep foam. February's potent nor'easter funneled 15-foot breakers onto Volusia County, beaching a mola mola, or an ocean sunfish, weighing an estimated 300 kilograms. Body cam video shows officers comparing the fish to a slimy Roomba while using a stretcher board and rip current timing to slide it back into deeper water. According to NOAA, sunfish lack swim bladders and rely on dive and glide routines. Sudden pressure changes during storms can leave them stuck near the surface and vulnerable to shoreward currents. The fish powered off once afloat, closing our list with a rare, happy ending caught on official tape.